Are you constantly adding oil between changes and wondering why your engine seems to drink it faster than you can fill it? Most drivers blame worn rings or valve seals, but the real culprit is usually something far simpler that you're doing every single day without realizing the damage. After diagnosing hundreds of excessive oil consumption cases, I've found that one driving habit stands out as the primary destroyer of oil integrity and the biggest contributor to premature oil breakdown. Today, I'm revealing exactly what that habit is, why it's so destructive, and how to break it before it costs you thousands in engine repairs. Let's get straight to the answer. The habit that's burning out your oil is short trip driving. I'm talking about trips under 10 miles where your engine never reaches full operating temperature. This single driving pattern causes more oil degradation and consumption than any other factor, except for actual mechanical failure. Here's what most drivers don't understand. Your engine is designed to operate at specific temperatures, typically between 195 and 220 degrees Fahrenheit for the coolant and 212 degrees or higher for the oil. At these temperatures, oil performs its job perfectly, lubricating components, cleaning deposits, and burning off contaminants like moisture and unburned fuel that accumulate during operation. But when you take short trips, your engine never reaches these optimal temperatures. The oil stays cold, and that's when the destruction begins. Research shows that short trips can cause up to 40% more oil contamination compared to longer drives where oil reaches proper operating temperature. Cold oil cannot burn off moisture that condenses inside your engine during startup. It cannot evaporate unburned fuel that seeps past piston rings during cold running. And it cannot properly suspend and clean contaminants that accumulate during combustion. Here's what happens on a microscopic level. Every time you start a cold engine, combustion isn't perfect. Some fuel doesn't burn completely and gets pushed past piston rings into the crankcase, diluting your oil. Condensation forms as hot exhaust gases meet cold metal surfaces, creating water droplets that also end up in your oil. These contaminants would normally evaporate once the engine reaches operating temperature, but on short trips that never happens. Instead, they accumulate trip after trip, creating a toxic mixture that rapidly degrades oil quality. This contaminated oil loses viscosity, meaning it becomes thinner and can't maintain proper film strength between moving parts. It turns acidic from moisture and combustion byproducts, attacking metal surfaces and seals. It becomes sludgy and thick, restricting flow to critical components. And it loses its ability to lubricate effectively, causing accelerated wear on bearings, camshafts, and cylinder walls. All of this happens invisibly while your oil still looks relatively clean in the dipstick. Industry experts confirm that if most of your driving consists of quick trips around town, typically under 8 kilometers or 5 miles, you should seriously consider cutting the manufacturer's recommended drain interval in half. That means if your manual says 7,500 miles between changes, short trip drivers should change oil at 3,750 miles. This isn't being overly cautious. It's recognizing that your driving conditions are fundamentally different from the highway cycles used to establish those interval recommendations. Here's a real example from the shop. Customer comes in complaining about oil consumption, adding a quart every 1,000 miles in a relatively new vehicle with just 60,000 miles. We check compression, it's perfect. We inspect for leaks, nothing external. We scope the cylinders, minimal wear. Then we ask about driving habits. Every day, 6-mile commute to work, maybe 10 minutes each way. Weekends, short trips to the grocery store, errands around town. Total monthly mileage, only about 800 miles, but spread across 40 or 50 short cold starts. The diagnosis was oil breakdown from chronic short trip syndrome. The oil never got hot enough to burn off fuel contamination, so it was constantly diluted. This thinned oil was sneaking past rings during high RPM moments and burning in the combustion chamber. The fix wasn't mechanical, it was behavioral. We recommended one 20 to 30-minute highway drive per week to properly heat the engine and burn off accumulated contaminants. Within 2 months, oil consumption dropped by 60%. No parts replaced, just a change in driving pattern. Now let's talk about why modern engines are even more susceptible to this problem. Manufacturers have reduced piston ring tension and bearing clearances to improve fuel economy and reduce emissions. These tighter tolerances work beautifully when oil maintains proper viscosity and cleanliness. but they're extremely sensitive to oil degradation. When short trips contaminate the oil and reduce its protective properties, these tight-tolerance engines suffer accelerated wear compared to older designs with more forgiving clearances. Turbocharged engines face an additional challenge. They lose oil through the PCV system where it accumulates in intake piping and intercoolers. Some oil loss this way is normal, but the amount varies dramatically with driving habits and climate. Short trips in cold weather maximize this oil loss because the PCV system works harder when there's more crankcase pressure from incomplete combustion and blow-by. Combined with oil degradation from never reaching temperature, turbocharged engines driven primarily on short trips can consume oil at alarming rates. Here's what you need to understand about oil consumption rates. Some modern manufacturers like BMW state that consuming 1 quart every 750 to 1,000 miles is acceptable. Subaru considers 1 quart per 1,000 to 1,200 miles normal. If you're following a 7,500-mile oil change interval and your engine consumes at these manufacturer-accepted rates, you could be adding 7 to 9 quarts between services. That's absurd, but it's the reality of modern engine design combined with extended drain intervals. The solution has 3 parts. First, recognize whether you're a short trip driver. If most of your trips are under 10 miles and your engine rarely reaches full operating temperature, you fall into this category. Second, adjust your oil change interval accordingly. Cut the manufacturer recommendation in half for severe service conditions, which short trips absolutely qualify as. Third, and this is critical, incorporate at least 1 longer drive per week where your engine runs at operating temperature for 20 to 30 minutes minimum. This weekly heat cycle burns off accumulated moisture, evaporates fuel contamination, and allows oil to properly circulate and clean internal components. Think of it as preventive maintenance through driving. You're not just moving the car, you're thermally resetting the oil and engine system to baseline conditions. Many drivers resist this because it seems wasteful to drive just for the sake of driving. But consider the alternative. Continuing short trip patterns leads to accelerated oil changes at best, or at worst, excessive oil consumption, carbon buildup, and eventually engine repairs costing thousands of dollars. Here's another factor most people miss. Cold engines also run rich, meaning they inject more fuel than necessary to maintain smooth operation. This excess fuel washes down cylinder walls, stripping away the oil film and getting into the crankcase. Over time, this fuel dilution can reduce oil viscosity by 10 to 15%, compromising protection throughout the engine. Once oil reaches operating temperature, this excess fuel would normally evaporate out through the PCV system. But on short trips, it just keeps accumulating. The type of oil you use matters too. Conventional oils degrade faster under short trip conditions than synthetic oils. If you're locked into short trip driving and can't change that pattern, switching to full synthetic and shortening your intervals provides better protection. Synthetic oils handle moisture and fuel contamination better, maintain viscosity more consistently, and resist thermal breakdown more effectively. It's not a complete solution, but it's damage control. Now let's address oil consumption in older engines versus newer ones. In high-mileage engines, oil consumption often comes from worn piston rings, valve guides, or cylinder wall scoring. But in newer engines with under 100,000 miles, excessive consumption is almost always related to oil degradation from poor driving conditions rather than mechanical wear. The engine isn't physically worn out. The oil is just so contaminated and degraded that it's not doing its job effectively. Here's the test to determine if your problem is mechanical or habitual. If you're experiencing oil consumption, try this. Change your oil, then commit to 1 longer drive every week for the next month. A 30-minute highway run at steady speed where the engine fully warms up. Also consider cutting your next interval in half. If oil consumption improves significantly without any mechanical changes, you've confirmed that driving habits and oil degradation were the culprits, not worn engine components. For those who absolutely cannot avoid short trip driving due to work location or life circumstances, here's your action plan. 1. Cut oil change intervals to 3,000 to 4,000 miles maximum. 2. Use full synthetic oil rated for your engine. 3. Whenever possible, combine errands into longer trips rather than multiple short ones. 4. On weekends or days off, take at least one 20 to 30-minute drive specifically to heat the engine. 5. Check oil level weekly because short trip driving increases consumption even in healthy engines. 6. Watch for signs of oil degradation like unusual color, fuel smell in the oil, or milky appearance indicating moisture contamination. The financial impact of ignoring short trip syndrome is significant. Beyond constantly buying oil to top off between changes, you're setting yourself up for expensive repairs. Excessive oil consumption leads to carbon deposits on pistons and valves. It causes catalytic converter damage from oil burning in the exhaust. It accelerates wear on timing chains, bearings, and cylinder walls. All of these repairs easily exceed several $1,000s, far more than the cost of more frequent oil changes and occasional longer drives to properly maintain your oil. If this information just explained why you've been fighting oil consumption despite a mechanically sound engine, hit that like button right now. Drop a comment telling me your typical trip length and whether you've noticed oil consumption issues. I want to hear your experiences. And if you want more honest talk about protecting your engine from hidden damage that most drivers never consider, subscribe to this channel. Next week, I'm revealing the truth about idling and why letting your car warm up for 10 minutes is actually destroying it faster than cold starts. You need to see what actually happens inside the engine. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it. Remember, your oil's worst enemy isn't miles. It's cold short trips that never let your engine breathe. Change that habit and watch your oil consumption drop dramatically.